Quick tutorial on how to mask a window using plastic film masking in a masker, and then I like to keep an extra roll of tape on my wrist for taping it off. So what's critical here is you gotta know where you're masking to. So if you see here, this window has been caulked in. We did not install this window, but we want that caulking to not get painted in this case because it's silicone. If this was painter's caulk, then we would want it to get painted. But start off with where does your masking need to go. Once you get clear on that, then you can run your masker. Now, what we're doing is we're running it all the way across the top, and then this unfolds down to 99 inches. You gotta make sure it'll say at the top of the film roll how tall it is. Make sure it's tall enough to go all the way down to the bottom of your window. If you have the right masking, it will. And if not, go get a different roll. So the other thing we're gonna be aware of is we want this to be a pretty straight, square cut, because when we unfold it, we want it to be able to run tight enough that we can just get it with one strip of tape. So this is pretty good. And now we want to, when we start, we wanna hold back a little bit from the edge so that there's room for the tape to bite onto the window. So then we're only pulling out about a foot, 16 inches at a time, and we're pressing it in, then working it back. Pressing it in, working it back. This is a little bit abnormal of a situation because of the caulking. Normally you have an inside corner you're going to, but we're just kind of going right below the caulking here. So I changed my mind here mid-masking. And I said we weren't gonna paint this caulking because it's silicone. We're gonna go ahead and paint it. We're just gonna use oil-based paint primer on it so it'll stick. And then we can paint it. I think it'll look better ultimately when it's all painted up. So then when you're cutting it off at the end here, same thing. You wanna cut it a little bit short. So you can see here's the window edge. Here's where the tape goes. So I'm cutting it just a little bit short. And then just be aggressive with it. Use the sharp blades and just really rip it out so that you don't start to tear and get all janky. You want it to be one clean, smooth rip. Okay, so now that we have that, we can unfold the masking. See how I left it a little bit short so there's room for the tape to stick. So now we just pull the masking down, and you want to unfold it as far as you need to, which sometimes usually it's not all the way, right? But you want to unfold it until you get down to the bottom. Now here you can see it almost ends perfectly on a seam, which is really nice. But if it's too long, then I fold it up underneath the back so that there's nothing out flapping. So think about it like you're wrapping a present. You want it to be beautiful and tight and origami folds and all of that. And so you don't want it to look scrappy. Now, what I like to do when I first start is just to get everything taut. I put a little strip of tape here at the bottom corner. So get the corner where I want it, fold it up underneath. Again, you gotta leave some room for the masking tape to adhere to the window frame. And then once I get that where I want it and it's tight, I'll put a little strip of tape here. I'm not too worried about that being the perfect spot because I'm just trying to get it tight so that I can then run the full strip of masking tape. So you can see now the plastic is kind of laying out tight. So now I can run. Now notice what I'm doing here. I'm actually gonna run it long up top because then I'm gonna use a knife and I'm gonna cut that off perfectly square. I'm gonna do the same thing down here. I'm gonna run it long. I'm gonna use a very sharp, it's important that it be very sharp razor blade. Make sure that it's tight because you don't want this plastic to blow off when you're spraying. So you can see how beautiful and tight that is. Then take a razor blade and I can cut that off right where I want it. And then that end also acts as masking. Beautiful. Okay, now we're gonna do the same thing back at this corner. We're gonna get it taut. Fold it up where we want it. Pull it out to the side. Drop a little strip there. I just wanna make sure that this strip of tape is not too far. I don't care if it's a little bit back because I'm gonna go over it. It's just there. Now here's an example of where a non-straight cut is a problem. You can see here that that's not gonna get covered with the masking tape. So that we're gonna need an extra strip of masking tape right there to make sure that covers, because what you really don't want is you don't want any spot where overspray can leak in behind the plastic and get on your window. It's fast and cheap to mask. It's not fast and cheap to clean off paint. So same thing as before, run it long. every 12 to 16 inches and then run it back. That's how it helps get it straight, because you pull it taut, press it in, run it back. And when I run it back, I'm using fairly light pressure the first pass because I don't want it to actually guide the tape. In other words, I don't want it to misguide the tape. And so when I run my first pass back, pressing on, I'm just barely touching it to get it stuck everywhere. And then when I come back down, I'm pushing it hard, because now that's not gonna move on me. I don't have to worry about it. So then cut off the tape here at the bottom. Cut off the tape here at the top. Then we just gotta run along the bottom. So I also like to go in a couple spots and get the masking where I want it. Again, get it taut, get it folded under right, so that when I run the masking, I can just run it all the way along one clean swoop. So get it folded up there. This is a big window, about 10 feet wide, so it's a great example of wanting to have a couple touch points to kind of guide it. And again, same thing, I'm not worried about getting it perfect, I'm just making sure it's not too far over. Now here we have the perfect cut end, so we just want to stop short on this end. There's no reason to run it long, so we're actually going to make sure the end stops on the tape somewhere. And then we're just going to run it all along. Same thing, every 12 to 16 inches, press it in, work it along. When we're done, this should look like a wrapped present, all beautiful and pretty and tight. So you could, whoever's spraying does not have to worry for a second about there being any issues with the masking coming off. And like with all masking, part of it is we're putting on a show for the clients, because when they see it, it's gonna make an impression. What impression is it making? Is it the impression of professionalism, or is it the impression of, hey, I've never done this before, and I'm just trying to hodgepodge and tape it together? So an example is if I were to make a mistake and there's a big gouge here in the middle. This is cheap. This is $2. Rip it off, replace it. If you just start taping and jacking everything around, it starts to look really lousy, and it's gonna give the client a different experience. You want the clients to feel something when they see your masking, and obviously you want it to be functional. All right, that's how you mask off a window.